Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the WSE Lounge. Today marks 2 years that the WSE Lounge has been in business. I'm very proud and honored to have 2 years on the air. We started out on Blog Talk Radio, and now I've moved over to Facebook Live on the WSE Lounge Facebook page. I've had many guests through the years, such as Jeff Jarrett, Kristen Alderson from One Life to Live in General Hospital, WWE Hall of Famer Tug Blanchard, Sonny, Mike Mooneyham, among others. And today's guest needs no introduction, but before we get to today's guest, let's hear the theme song for the WSE Lounge. Ladies and gentlemen, a man who has spent more than 20 years in the ring announcing for the AWA, the WWE, back then known as WWF, and WCW. Please, at this time, welcome a man that needs no introduction, former WCW ring announcer Gary Cappetta. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be on the air still for a total of 2 years. It's an honor to have you to be a part of the 2-year anniversary show. I mean, you've made quite a name for yourself. I mean, out there announcing for back before WCW was WCW, back when it was NWA. Can you tell the fans how you got your start in the business?
Well, back in the day when I was in college, I was a wrestling fan, and even though tickets were only $3 and $5 for ringside seats, everything was pretty different, and I didn't have a whole lot of money to go to the shows, and I wanted to get in for free, and I started writing for a magazine. And I was at a show one night, they had no announcer, and I was sitting up at ringside because I had press credentials, and I volunteered, and that's how I started.
Wow, that is a very interesting journey, to say the least, of how you got in, because I know a lot of different guys have got in the business in different ways, whether it being wrestlers or announcers, or whatever. They said that they would go down to the gym and somebody said, "Hey, you ever thought about wrestling?" And they said, "No, I had never thought of wrestling." Then they'll just start training all of a sudden, and then it starts that way.
It couldn't happen today. There were different times, and everything is so slickly produced today. Even the live house shows, that they go with their personnel intact. And it was just different back then. It was a little bit more haphazard when it comes to the support people like a ring announcer.
Would you say that you had any inspirations that maybe got you into wanting to do the ring announcing?
The only inspiration I had that night that I volunteered was they didn't have an announcer, and the promoter in between between the matches would come up from the box office and make the introductions, and I was just impatient with it. So I had no design, I had no plan on being a ring announcer. I was just annoyed that, it was dragging the show down. So then I just volunteered.
Well, it looks like you volunteered at the right time in the right place.
Yeah, I mean, there was no plan to it. I didn't go that night thinking or ever having a thought beforehand that I wanted to be a ring announcer. As a fan, I was just impatient with the promoter, so I just volunteered.
I wanna real quick give a shout out to Jason Boyd. He's a ring announcer down here in Georgia for Peach State Wrestling Alliance. Shane Knowles runs the company, and Jason Boyd was actually put over by Jim Cornette as being one of the best ring announcers in the state of Georgia, and you've always been his inspiration.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's humbling. Wow.
Yeah, and I want to let the fans know, you got any comments or questions, please type them below in the comment bar, and I'll direct them over to Gary Cappetta, and he'll be answering your questions.
I could just make one comment about Jason for a second.
Go ahead.
Probably referees too. When you start, you only know what you've seen and what you like. As a fan, what you like. So you're going to maybe take 2 or 3 different ring announcers or wrestlers and sort of pattern yourself after them. And then as time goes by, you become your own person, and you create your own persona if you have the longevity, and it's it could be a singer. I mean, it could be an actor. In this case, we're talking about an announcer or a wrestler.
Uh-huh.
So it's, I had people that I liked too, that they were the only models that I had to go on. So it's an interesting process.
Well, what would you say? I know you said it was an interesting process. What would you say for you, though? How much preparation actually went into it for you on a daily basis when it came to announcing?
I had no preparation.
Oh, wow.
Once I had the names of who was going to wrestle, I was a fan, and I pretty much knew where they were from and what they weighed, and it was just to get up the gumption, just have the nerve to get up and do the introductions. And it's only with doing it that you get better. So I was fortunate that, especially once I started doing WWF TV, there were no other announcers in the areas where I did my announcing. So I announced 2-3 times a week on weeknights and sometimes on weekends. So you get that kind of constant practice, and you're going to reach your potential. Whether that's good enough to be a professional or not, it depends upon you. But I pretty much had the feel to myself because of Gorilla Monsoon. He was he was an owner of the WWF at the time, and he was my guardian angel. He was the one that said, "Okay, now you're going to be on TV." So I loved him, and I always will, and I'll always be thankful to him. So as long as you keep doing it, the more you get booked, the more experience you have, the better you're going to get.
Yes, God bless Gorilla Monsoon. He was one of the best, and you're exactly right on that. And with that, before I get into any other discussion, I'm going to go to the fans. One fan has a question. Harold says, do you have a favorite or current ring announcer?
I'm not current with today's ring announcers. So for me to single one person out would be kind of impossible because I just don't know who they are.
Okay. And Jason says that's the way I do it. He's referring to what you was talking about, going on the weekends and doing the announcing and everything for the different wrestling companies and everything.
Yeah, because because I worked with the McMahon family for 11 years, and for that entire time, I was teaching school. So it was always a part-time gig for me. So it was always, nighttime wherever I could travel, which was mostly New Jersey, Delaware, and Eastern Pennsylvania, sometimes into the New York boroughs, and then on the weekends. So, it was a sideline for me for a long time.
Now, speaking of the McMahons, what was it like working for WWF at the time?
Well, I always considered my direct boss to be Gorilla Monsoon. I never had a warm relationship with the McMahons. It just wasn't their style. When you did a good job, Monsoon would let you know, and the McMahons would ignore you. So I never had much of a relationship with them. Even though for years and years I was the TV announcer and Vince McMahon Jr. was the commentator. I mean, he was sitting right there at ringside, and his dad was always in the office. So I saw them very often, but they pretty much didn't acknowledge my presence.
Wow, that's gotta really be bad that they didn't. I mean, kind of make you. I don't know how'd that make you feel. They didn't acknowledge your presence at all.
It made me feel exactly as they wanted me to feel, which was insecure. That was, I don't know what he's like today, but that was their method of control. Especially since wrestling wasn't my full-time profession, because I was independent financially from wrestling, and that's not something that they prefer, because that's less control they have over you.
Yeah, I've always heard the story, and I don't know how much of truth this is, but I've always heard that Vince McMahon cannot stand when anybody sneezes because he doesn't have control over that. That's what I've always heard.
I can only talk about those days. That was a long time ago. I think it would be interesting if in the future you had an opportunity to talk to someone who's recently worked for the McMahon family and to make that comparison to see if that's still how they run things.
Yeah, that would be interesting, and I hope to do that. Now, I understand that if you could, I want to ask you, what was it like for you the last night at Center Stage? Because you told me you had a story for the fans.
Oh, Center Stage. Well, I knew that it was set for the folks that may not be aware. Center Stage is a facility in Atlanta, Georgia, where we taped our TBS Saturday night show. So that was the flagship show of the NWA and then WCW. It was the flagship national show. And so I did it for several years, and many of the same fans would come to the tapings, and I would always have a conversation from center ring to the fans, because we would talk about, I would tell them when we started, we need to get a nice energetic start to the TV show, and they would work with me, and cheer when the show started, and I had a good rapport with the people, the fans at Center Stage. So, from my experience, from when I was a kid, I would go to the shows and, follow wrestling, and then all of a sudden, a wrestler would stop appearing. And they'd never explain what happened to him. They would never say where he went. You'd never know he was going to go away. And, from a fan's perspective, it was just, oh, well, okay, I guess he's not here anymore. And I never liked that. So, because I had a rapport with the people the fans at Center Stage, I told them that night that was going to be my last night. And that I wanted them to, give an extra big, just to push what I was trying to get them to do, extra big cheers that night. center stage. In the meantime, I still had a pay-per-view to do with WCW before my contract ended. And that was like another week and a half, 2 weeks away, down in St. Petersburg, Florida. When I started to talk to we were off camera, word went back to management that I was talking to the people like people. I wasn't announcing a match, I was just interacting with the people.
Yeah.
And I had just told them that that was my last night. And then all of a sudden, different guys from management started coming out of the dressing room. And they stood at the top of the ramp looking at me, staring at me. And I'm saying to myself, what do they think I'm going to say? Like, what? They've worked with me, and my career was so long, and I was always very loyal to the promotion that I worked for. Like, I got the impression that they thought I was going to undermine them, and I was going to say something negative about the promotion. And I was doing just the opposite. And I think I even told them that Dave Penzer was going to be taking over for me the next time, and that I would hope that they'd give him the same support that they had given me, in getting, my job done. And I thanked them for, for helping me out over the years.
Yeah.
And encourage them to continue. So I thought that was strange. They just couldn't. It was almost like they didn't know me, and it was fortified when I got to the pay-per-view in St. Petersburg, because the flight they had put me on was delayed. So I was late at getting to the production meeting. And by the time I got to the production meeting, it was about half through, and I walked in the room, and when I walked in the room, there was silence, and they all just stared at me. And I thought, this is strange. And there were no seats around the tables. Very long board table. There must have been 20 guys sitting around it. So I just, with a few other guys, I sat on the floor, leaned against the wall, and the promoter came over to me and gave me the lineup. And when I looked at the lineup, they had taken my name off of it. And the reason they had taken my name off of it was, once again, they just thought I was going to blow them off. They thought I wasn't going to show up for my last announcing gig.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm saying to myself, they don't know me. I mean, how could they think that I would do that? It was such a jaded way. Maybe they had been screwed many times before. I don't know. But you would think that at least that because of the history that I had, the many years that I worked for them, that they would have some sense that I would never do that. And if I was planning on not going to the last show, I would have told them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Forget you. I'm not going. It was just incredible at the way that they looked at me at the end, at the suspicion that they had. And so I just thought that was probably a very interesting statement about the entire business of pro wrestling.
It really is, because I mean, that's kind of a funny story, what you were saying, because it's kind of like they were worried that you were gonna give out the results of their upcoming storylines and what they're gonna do to the fans and everything. I mean, that's funny.
I was always a team player. I never said, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to go there. The only time that I ever gave them any resistance was when my contract, the year before, when my contract time had expired and they weren't making any move to renegotiate. And at that point I said, well, if I don't have a contract, then I guess I'm not working for you. But for years and years, I did exactly what they asked me to do. And it made a huge statement about how suspicious people in pro wrestling were at the time, at least.
Well, speaking of pro wrestling, I wanna ask you now. I know that I know you were in NWA and you were in WCW. What was it like for you working for NWA and WCW?
Well, it was very different because when I worked for the Crockett family, it was mostly in a few specific cities. I worked in Baltimore. I worked at the Meadowlands Arena in New Jersey. I worked in New Haven, Connecticut for them. I worked, I think, a little bit in New York City. And that was a very exciting time. I was going from the Hulk Hogan WWF to the kick-ass NWA. It was like going from ballet to a street fight. I had no idea how intense the NWA product was until I started announcing for them. And it was like really energizing. And it was before WCW, and so it was not very corporate, and it was just an ideal time. I really enjoyed those years. And then, of course, when it turned into WCW, and then for the first time I worked full-time in wrestling. I left teaching at the time because I had to go on the road and be at the house shows and all the TVs and their pay-per-views and their clashes and all of that. It was very corporate. And I'm not a corporate kind of guy, so I just like being on the road, staying away from CNN Center, and tried to be as try to have as good a time as I could in the corporate environment. So yeah, the NWA and WCW, they were very different. Just one was a family business, the other was a corporate enterprise.
So when you I believe it was May of 1995 that whenever WCW had actually not renegotiated a contract with you. When you left the company, was that about the time that Hulk Hogan was coming in, or had he already come in about a month before?
He had come in, I believe, in '94. But here's an example of the kind of thing that they did at the end.
Okay.
At the time, we were taping the WCW Worldwide show, which was a syndicated show every week on your local channel. And we were taping it in Orlando at Disney MGM. And May was my anniversary date for my contract. And they said, Gary, we'll talk to you in Orlando. I said, I really don't plan on going to Orlando. I don't have a contract. Gary, just come to Orlando. We'll work out a contract for you. So I said, okay. So I go to Orlando. Now, at the time, we were doing 3 months worth of tapings in a week. They never would talk to me about my contract. My contract was never renewed, which was fine. I mean, that was their decision. But by the end of that week, they had me on television through August. I had taped all those shows. That's the kind of thing that starts, that it's just distrust. You have to have a certain distrust for people who do that kind of thing. Don't tell me we're going to go and renew your contract while we're there, and then ignore me for the week or put me off for the week. So I would ask, when are we going to talk about this? When are we going to talk about this? And before I knew it, the week was over. They had my performances down through August, and of course, I didn't continue with them. It's kind of sneaky,
Yeah, it does sound very sneaky.
And I have to say, and I don't know how this comes across, but I really didn't deserve it. Honestly, for all those years, I went wherever they told me to do. I did whatever they asked me to do, and boy, it was like a culture of distrust. It was very odd at the end.
Speaking of WCW, whatever happened to, and I wonder this a lot because I don't never hear anything about him in the news or anywhere. Whatever happened to Doug Dillinger?
honestly, I'm not sure. The last time I spoke to Doug was shortly after I stopped working for them. So that was decades ago, a long time ago.
Wow.
I don't know. I'm assuming he retired from the police force in Charlotte and probably enjoyed a nice retirement, but I don't know.
Okay. What was it like for you working with Dusty Rhodes?
Oh, I love Dusty. Dusty was he was a lot of fun to work with. When he was the booker at WCW and would hold the production meetings, it was just probably the most entertaining time of the day. He would tell stories about his family and his kids, and of course we get our work done.
Yeah.
And then I had an opportunity to see him maybe 10 years after I finished with WCW, because I was doing the backstage interviews for Ring of Honor, and Dusty was brought into Philadelphia for a guest appearance. And it was wonderful, just talking to him and, reminiscing about, our time together.
Yeah, I believe two of the best in the business was Dusty Rhodes and Roddy Piper. I know they were great on the mic. I mean, there's not really too many out there that are like they were on the mic. I mean, you can say there's Ric Flair is still out there and other ones, but not too many out there that that were like them.
Yeah, incredible charisma. Really connected with the people. I always enjoyed working with Dusty. Why did Jim Cornette refer to you as the world's most dangerous announcer? I'm not sure. You'd have to ask Jim that. I know where it came from. It came from the David Letterman show. David Letterman was brought up in Indiana, and Dick the Bruiser was the world's most dangerous wrestler. And then when David Letterman had his talk show, he called his band leader, Paul Schaefer, the world's most dangerous band, I think. And now, why Cornette applied that to me, maybe it was just because I was such a conservative looking, just the opposite of what you would think of as being dangerous. And he probably just thought it was funny.
What's a funny road story that you can tell the fans from your time in WCW?
Funny road story. Boy, I'm not good at telling funny anythings. One thing that was kind of absurd was, this happened in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I'm heading back in a few weeks, but we'll get to that later. The Steiner brothers were to appear on a kids' after-school show. It was called Happy the Clown Show. And it was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that was the station where the wrestling show was shown. So earlier in the day, I was out to lunch with the promoter and the station manager, the TV station manager. And at lunch, the promoter got a call from the Steiner brothers. For whatever reason, they were not going to be able to get into town early enough to go on the Happy the Clown show. So this was a live kiddie show that was after school, like 3:30. So the station manager was all upset. He said, well, what are we going to do? And I don't know why they had to do anything. Maybe they had announced that the WCW personalities were going to be there. I don't know. They must have advertised something. So, of course, the only one that was in town was sitting at the table with them, and I wound up going on the Happy the Clown show. So I put my tuxedo on, and it was just the most uncomfortable, ridiculous. I would love to see a tape of that today, because I was probably, he was happy, he's Happy the Clown. And the kids are all cheering, and I was probably in a real foul mood, just foul. Little things like that would happen.
Wow, I can't even imagine that. Maybe it's somewhere out there in YouTube land. Maybe it's out there on the internet somewhere.
If I remember correctly, he had a happy house burst out of the happy house onto the set. It was just not something I was into.
Wow. Can you tell the fans about your book that you wrote and self-published, Body Slams: Memoirs of a Wrestling Pitchman?
Well, when I finished with WCW, I had been on the road probably like 20 days a month for 6 years, and it was difficult. You know, it was difficult to make the transition to just to being sedentary to being home. So I just started to write down some ideas. I didn't have any intention at first to write a book, but it was like a therapeutic exercise. It was like it was just a healthy thing to do.
Uh-huh.
And before I knew it, I had a lot of material, and I decided to put it in the form of a book. And so you're right, I self-published it, and it was so successful that a publisher picked it up 5 years later. ECW Press picked it up and now still owns the rights to the book. And the book can still be bought on in your local bookstores or on Amazon or just about anywhere books are sold.
Okay, that's wonderful, and it's great. It's great that you did that, and wrote a book and everything. And speaking of books, another man who's wrote a book, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm gonna try to get a chance to read it. It's called "Is Wrestling Fake? I Didn't Know It Was Broken." Is Bill Apter. Have you ever had the chance and opportunity to work with Bill Apter?
Sure. I know Bill Apter from my years and years with the WWF. We went way back because he's local to the area. He would be at all of the main shows. And in fact, I was with Bill this summer. There was a benefit for Wounded Warriors in Philadelphia. And so I went, and Bill was there. And yeah, so I was just with him about a month and a half ago.
Interesting. And speaking of Wounded Warriors, and also let me correct myself, is Wrestling Fixed? I didn't know it was broken. It's not as Wrestling Fake. Sorry about that. But speaking of Wounded Warriors, I believe that Scott Baio and Eric Bischoff also are big fans of that with the Gary Sinus Foundation, I believe. You donate money to the Gary. I believe his last name is Sinus.
Nice.
Yeah, and they're big fans of that.
Wonderful organization.
Yeah, it really is. What kind of voiceover work have you done?
Probably the two voiceover jobs that I had that are best known by people are I was one of the ring announce voice in the movie The Wrestler.
Uh-huh.
And also I did a video game. It's Legends of Wrestling Showdown.
Okay, that's the one that had the Rock and Roll Express and Terry Funk and all them on there?
Yeah, it's got dozens and dozens of wrestlers on there. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you ever auditioned for any other TV shows or movies or anything? Is that something you'd like to do, or you don't think so?
No, not. Usually, anything that I've done outside of, the wrestling profession, people have seen my work and have come to me, and I've agreed to go out and do something a little bit different. But no, I've never sought.
Okay, now I know that you do. I know that you have been in plays before. Is that correct? You do screenplays and stuff like that.
I did. When I finished writing the book, what I did was I took my experiences and I gave them to a young wrestler.
Uh-huh.
And the screenplay was called Fall for the Dream, and it takes you through the career of same idea, a kid wanting to get into the wrestling profession, but in this case he was a wrestler, and he went on to be very successful. And at the end of the film, he has a conflict with the promoter that actually put him in, where, so it would be like Hulk Hogan working his way up and having a conflict at the end with Vince McMahon. And the conflict in my screenplay takes place in the ring. And it's a little bit violent. That's the only thing violent about it. But, it was called Fall for the Dream.
Well, that's very interesting, fans out there. If you didn't know that, that's very interesting what Gary Cappetta just said. And also, I know that you also did a one-man show.
Yeah, I'm reviving that.
Oh.
It's now called Beyond Body Slams.
Uh-huh.
And it's, once again, it's taking the stories from my book Body Slams, and it's a multimedia show. So I have a giant screen. You're seeing pictures of who I'm talking about behind me. You're seeing some never before seen home video of, in one case, we're touring in Europe. In another case, in a dressing room of a Great American Bash from back in the 80s. And, there's music, there's, it's just a one-man show of telling my story, which I'm going to be doing an abbreviated version of it at the convention WrestleCon, which is WrestleMania weekend in Orlando. So I'm going to be doing probably 20 minutes of the show is about an hour and a half long, but I'm probably going to be taking 20 minutes out of it and getting up on stage and doing it.
Well, that'll be great. And one thing that I thought of when you said that about doing the one man show, and I guess this just naturally popped in my head, but I'm thankful that your one man show is not like when Mick Foley was back in the Attitude Era, and he was Dude Love, Mankind, and Cactus Jack, and he had all four personalities with trick photography on the camera at one time. You remember that?
Mick, I don't remember that, but I know that Mick and I don't think he does it anymore, but he was going to comedy clubs.
Yeah.
I think Jake the Snake has been out to comedy clubs, and Rob Van Dam, I think, is going to be doing one in Atlantic City. I saw advertised. This is different. It's not trying to be funny, and it's not, like I said, I'm not a funny guy. It's not trying to be funny, and it's not just a question and answer session. It's a scripted story, and people that come to see it they'll identify with what I experienced. They will. It connects with the audience.
Well, that's very interesting that you've decided to revive that, and that's interesting that it connects with the audience and they can actually see by the story of what it is, because I know a lot of times in different movies and genres and stuff, you watch or TV shows, you look at them and you try to connect with the character that's on screen acting, and you just really can't get into the character that's trying to play the part, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I had created this show a while ago, and I had done it at a college, Christopher Newport University in Virginia, and then I did it up in New York State. So I had done it a while ago, and I've just decided to update it and just to do a revival of the show and see how far it goes.
Awesome. Now, do you get a chance to check out the WWE Network?
No, I've never been there.
Okay, the reason I asked that is I know you've probably heard about the WWE Network has classic content and stuff. Well, I was wondering from your opinion and your perspective, they've added all of the WCW Nitros, but do you think they'll ever add WCW Main Event and the Power Hour and Worldwide and WCW Saturday Night?
I'm sure they will. I mean, they own it. So for them to not profit from it when they've got it, I mean, that would surprise me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you have any upcoming appearances that you'd like to promote, sir?
I do. I
Okay.
do. I'm going to be doing a benefit in New Egypt, New Jersey on October 8th at the high school. Going to be doing guest ring announcing. I'm just going to announce the main event there. That's Saturday, October 8th. Then Saturday, October 22nd, I'm going to be in Fort Wayne, Indiana at the Heroes and Legends Convention. I'll be there at 3 p.m., Fort Wayne, Indiana, October 22nd. Then the weekend of October 28th, 29th, I'm going to be, I was asked to come into the Monster Factory Wrestling Camp, and I'm going to be giving a presentation on the business of pro wrestling, on how to conduct yourself on the business side of things, how to have a good, long career, the kinds of things you can do that will help you to do that. Nothing's guaranteed, but how to deal with the politics in wrestling. So that's October 28th, 29th at the Monster Factory Wrestling Camp. There are young people from all over the country that a couple times a year come to the Monster Factory. It's just probably the best known wrestling academy in the country. So I'm real happy to be there. And then heading to Tennessee in November for NWA Mid-South. So I look forward to returning there too.
Wow, that sounds awesome, fans, and go and check that out. And speaking of fans, got another question for you, Gary.
Sure.
From Shane, he says, "How was it for you to work for Bill Watts, and what are your thoughts about the off the top rope violation?"
Once again, I enjoyed working with Bill Watts. Bill Watts, you just have to understand Bill Watts' approach and his personality. He's very specific about what he wants, and he's very serious about it. And my experience has shown that if you give him what he asks for, then you're fine with him. I was even in a situation where he told me what he wanted me to do one night, and I thought there might be a better way to do it, and I made the recommendation to him, and he said, "I think that's right. I think that works better." So, yeah, I enjoyed working with just about everyone through the years. It's a matter of going in. You can apply this to whatever occupation you're in, whatever line of work you do. You just go in and you do what's asked of you, and you do it to the best of your ability, and most times there's not going to be a problem. So yeah, I like Bill Watts. The over-the-top thing was probably out of its time. Honestly, I never talked to him about it, so I don't know. I don't know if he had a specific thought in mind when he did that. Whether he was planning to do some kind of an angle around that. Whether it was meant to be temporary. Honestly, I don't know. So I don't want to speak negatively of it without knowing his rationale behind it. Without his reasoning.
Yeah,
it did turn out to be out of touch for the time, though.
I think it did too, because one thing that always bothered me, specifically, former guest of the show, beautiful Bobby Eaton, whenever he would go up for his finishing move, I believe it was the Alabama Jam. He couldn't do his move off the top rope because it was banned. That was a violation. You get disqualified.
Right.
And so I didn't really get that, and I didn't know if you knew this or not, Gary, but whenever Dr. Tom Pritchard was on the show a while back, he actually revealed something to me on the show that I didn't know. He said that that before Hulk Hogan came into WCW, that there was a deal set in place whenever it was him and Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane came over there with Jim Cornette on WCW Saturday Night from Smoky Mountain Wrestling. There was a deal set in place and contracts laid out on the table for some kind of invasion angle to take place and a swap of talent between WCW and Smoky Mountain Wrestling at the time.
That would be something that I would not, wouldn't be privy to.
Okay.
That would be, I was never on a booking committee. Really, I was not a decision maker at that time in WCW. So that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
To have seen how that would have.
Yeah, it does.
With Jim Cornette being involved, it's always interesting when Mr. Cornette's involved.
Yeah, he's a very interesting fella.
He is. I have a great deal of respect for Jim. We don't always agree on things. In fact, when I originally wrote the first edition of my book, I put a story in there of it was upstate Pennsylvania, and a fan was trying to. It was a very hot. When I say hot, I mean a very energized crowd, and this one fella went after Cornette, and he started coming over the railing, and Cornette walloped him with his racket and splattered the guy's nose. And when I told the story in the original version of Body Slams, I characterized the guy as an old guy. He looked old to me, so I just assumed that he was old. When the second version of Body Slams came out, which is the one that's on sale now, I gave people who disagreed with me an opportunity to respond. And so I offered Vince McMahon, I offered Mick Foley, Jim Cornette, a bunch of people, an opportunity. And Jim Cornette took me up on it, and he proved to me that, because he felt that he came across poorly in that story, because I portrayed the guy that came after him as an old guy. And as it turns out, the guy was in his 30s. And
wow.
So anyone that picks up the new edition of Body Slams will see Jim Cornette writing about why he was upset with what I put in the original edition, and and I gave him the last word. So I think we made peace. We made peace with that. I have a lot of respect for him, mostly because he speaks his mind, and if he doesn't agree with you, he'll tell you, and you know exactly where he stands. And not many people are willing to do that, whether you agree with him or not. And sometimes I agree with him, and sometimes I don't. But I respect him for standing up for the things that he sees as being right and true.
Do you kind of think in some ways that Paul Heyman's kind of that way too? On telling you how he feels?
I'm sorry, but I didn't hear the question.
I said, do you kind of feel in some ways that Paul Heyman's kind of that way too?
Paul Heyman sometimes is that way. Paul Heyman is more of a political operative. So he will bend a little bit more, regardless of what his on-screen persona is. It's just to say his style in dealing with management is different.
I agree with you on that. I want to tell you a funny story. You was talking about Jim Cornette. I want to tell you a funny story. This happened before I was born. I was told that one of my relatives, I'm not exactly sure, I think it was on my grandmother's side, one of my relatives, they were at the Omni down in Atlanta before they tore it down. And they had went down there to watch a match, and they didn't get the philosophy that in the ring, that outside of the ring, the heel and the baby face, they were friends. Well, they didn't get that philosophy, and they were sitting there watching the match, and they look up, and the person that they wanted to win, well, they're not winning. So they take off their high heel shoe and they head down toward the ring, and they're fixing to hit the person over the head, and security has to drag them out of the arena.
Wow.
Yeah, so they didn't get the philosophy that, the bad guy and good guy was really, friends at the end of the day.
Well, they weren't supposed to get that. They weren't supposed to know that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
They were acting appropriately. I mean, maybe they shouldn't have stormed the ring, but
yeah.
I'm just saying their feelings were correct. Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to going. I haven't been to Indiana in the Midwest since my first book tour, so I'm really looking forward to going to the Heroes and Legends convention in Fort Wayne, because I get letters from so many people from that area.
Uh-huh.
And so it'll be nice to be able to see them, and to see the people, the friends that I made when I was out there back when I was with WCW. Also, I wanted to mention that
okay.
You were nice enough to bring up the one-man show, and it is. I told you that I'm going to revive it, and I'm 99% sure it's going to be in February, and it's going to be in the Philadelphia area. I just have to the first one. So I just have to be sure that everything is correct about that before I make an official announcement.
Okay.
But people can go to my Facebook page, which is GMC for Real, GMC number 4, REAL, and I'll announce there, when it's going to happen, how people can get tickets, and all the details.
Okay, and one more thing before you go, Gary. Is there do you have Twitter or Instagram or anything like that people can follow you on, or you don't have that?
I do have Twitter, but I really don't like Twitter.
Okay.
I spend most of my time when I'm online on Facebook, and I have it set up so that whatever I post on Facebook automatically goes on Twitter.
Okay.
I just don't understand why they handcuff you with 140 characters.
I don't get that either. I mean, it's like when you're trying to respond to somebody. It's like it's like when I'm doing a show or something, and I try to put it out there to the audience. Well, I can't put all the words I want to put out there because they only limit you to a certain amount of letters, and then I have to shorten everything down. I have to say, well, so and so is going to be on here at this time, and so it. I don't know why they do that. They need to fix it. They need to do something about that.
You can tell that I need a lot of words to express myself.
Yeah.
And by the time, like you just said, by the time I take this out, that out, and the other thing out, it's really not what I wanted to say to begin with.
That's right. That's right.
So, it's like that. So I Facebook, GMC number 4 Real, GMC for Real.
You heard that, folks. GMC for Real on Facebook. Go and like that page and find out about all the upcoming events that Gary Cappetta has announced tonight on the show that he has coming up. He's going to be back in Indiana next year. He'll let you know exactly on the date on that. He don't know yet. So everybody go and also he's going to be at the high school announcing the main event, and so everybody go and check that out, and just stay tuned to his page and go and like his page.
It's all listed on the on my events, on the events of the Gary Michael Cappetta page.
All listed on his events of the Gary Michael Cappetta page.
Yep.
And Gary, I want to thank you so much for being on the 2-year anniversary of the WSE Lounge tonight, and I wish you the best in all you do, sir.
Thank you, and congratulations again on your anniversary. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, sir, and thank you.
Okay, good night.
Okay, good night. God bless. Bye-bye. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was former WCW wrestling announcer Gary Cappetta. And that was a 2-year anniversary show tonight. And as behind me, you see the banner, WSE Lounge. And on this banner behind me has every single guest that has ever been on this show when it started back on September 19th of 2014 with Dementia DeRose as the first guest. But it has everybody from Jerry Stubbs to referee Radar Martin, Jason Boyd, Jeff Jarrett, Tyson Dean, Eric Bischoff, Rocky King. I could go on and on, but it's got everybody. But there's been 138 guests that's been on the show, and tonight was our 139th guest with former WCW wrestling announcer Gary Cappetta. And I'll be announcing more guests coming to the WSE Lounge very soon. So stay tuned to the WSE Lounge, because I'll be announcing more guests, and tell your friends to go and like the WSE Lounge page. And I'll be announcing more guests coming to the show very soon. So as always, I'm going to let Mike Mooneyham close the show out. Well, I'll tell you what, better yet, instead of letting Mike Mooneyham close the show out tonight, I'm going to go ahead and close it out and thank all of you for your support. Without you fans, this wouldn't have been possible. 2 years on the air is unbelievable. Having 2 years under my belt, I mean, that's great. That's awesome. And without your support of the soap fans, the wrestling fans, the fans of country music, gospel music, any kind of singers, fans of celebrities, reality TV, whatever. Thank you so much for all your support. And stay tuned to the WSE Lounge, as I'll be announcing more stars coming soon to the WSE Lounge.